What is the most NSFW thing you've seen happen in a school environment? Many years ago, but in swim class one girl's swim costume went almost totally see-through and wet. 15-year-old me was quite transfixed. This is kind of a weird one, but in 7th grade I was friends with a girl who had a very serious porn addiction. This was before smartphones, but she would carry around folded up pictures cut from magazines to mostly women, but some men, in her bag to look at and, I assume, try to get off to any time she was alone, which was usually in the bathroom stall. It was the same way when I was at her house, except she would just take breaks every now and then to literally just walk into the closet and shut the door. It was very bizarre in retrospect, but in 7th grade you don't really have a baseline for well-adjusted behavior, so honestly I didn't think anything about it. Not the typical NSFW, but messed up all the same. This kid who used to sit with us at lunch, Josh, was a self-proclaimed Satanist, and was all about blood, violence, death, etc. A friggin' weirdo. Anyhow, one day there is a fight at the table next to us. Some kid gets punched in the nose, bleeding everywhere. Teachers shuffle both kids off to the principal, before the janitor can come and clean up the blood that had dripped on the table and seats. Josh dipped his finger into the blood, popped it in his mouth and licked it all off. Did it 2 or 3 more times before he stopped and looked at me with the biggest eating grin. It was pretty mental. One of my friends during our junior year of high school whipped out his D under his desk to show his then so for some ungodly reason. She screamed for a split second, which prompted the teacher to come over. He looked like he was about to ducking freak when he finally mustered out one word: no. Sent him and his so to the office. One kid caught a glimpse of it, and from there on out, his name was Needle D Nick. Edit. RIP inbox, and no, I am not Needle D Nick. Trading Pokemon cards for a hand job. Girl busts out of a room, storms through the room we were gathered in, spits in another girl's face and says that's your boyfriend's load. Jaws hit the floor, and the other girl cried. I'm 40 and still tell this story. In high school at lunch one day everyone was standing around in the halls waiting for the bell. There was a commotion near the boys' bathroom and a line forming. It literally looked like an organized thing where people were going in single file then coming out freaking out laughing etc. So I waited in line and went in. The only way I can describe it is that someone had out a 2-liter bottle, sized it, and it was literally sticking up past the toilet seat in the bowl. Someone must have died that day. We had a teacher who was NSFW. He was an 80-year-old ethics teacher, still at least 6 feet tall despite serious hunching. He would curse, fart and scratch his balls, to the horror of the nerdy girls who sat in the front row. When it was time for roll call, he would just throw his folder at a girl and tell her to do the roll call for him. Emphasis on throw. He also made all sorts of weird jokes. Like when teaching us about norms he was joking, well, Norma is a prostitute I met in Mazatlan. Works a little better in Spanish. Every week in junior school we would have an assembly and one class would have to put it on. It was our turn. And we had an autistic boy in our class. I forget what he was supposed to do since this was the 2nd grade. He walked up to the microphone with a big smile on his face and was about to speak to the entire school. Teachers, some parents and every student there. Instead of talking he immediately dropped his pants and started spanking it. Everyone was pretty stunned. But when his special needs educator tried to take him off stage he resisted like crazy, all whilst still choking the chicken. I don't think anything else in my school career tops that. Here is a story for you. Grade 10 history class. The last day before winter break. Since it's the last day we were just watching movies as a class. Some Bugs Bunny World War II propaganda films or something. The teacher is just sitting at her desk not really doing anything. Our desks are sort of arranged in a U, and I'm sitting on one of the corners. There is a very skinny white boy named Rudolph, obviously not his real name, and a fat sassy black girl named Dasher, also not real name, right next to him. Rudolph had a lot of problems in his home life and came to school plastered a few times and was generally weird. And I don't think these two got on very well. Rudolph decided that they should play the Are You Nervous game. For those who don't know, that's when you slide your hand up someone's thigh until that person gets nervous and loses. So Rudolph goes first, and I'm kinda half watching the movie. and Dasher stops before he gets too close to her V. Then Dasher goes, and Rudolph kinda whispers, "You're literally going to have to touch my balls before I say it." I expected the game to end there, her calling him a perv or something, but no. She unzips his pants while like nervously looking at the teacher. I immediately text my friends in class to look at it, and now 4 of us are watching. She then very evidently starts giving Rudolph a manual meat massage for like 2 minutes, before pulling her hand out and wiping it on his pants. Nobody ever said anything. They never really talked again. Nada. Once during a class meeting, one kid ripped out some of his pubes to prove to another kid that he did in fact have pubes. I went to an all-boys Catholic school one night, my senior year, when all of us dorks were working late on the yearbook. I walked into the bathroom to see 2 boys a year below me wrestling on the ground, one still in his boxers and the other with his boxers at his ankles. They never saw me. One of the stairwells in my high school was notoriously used for weed and sex cause no cameras and a door leading outside. I didn't know this and walked in on a couple going all out in there. In college, not much. Most there was walking up a staircase and some girl ahead of me wearing a skirt, no underwear. She noticed I was looking. Exhibitionism is great. A guy at my school put a 8-inch dildo up his ass for an entire day at school as penance for cheating on his girlfriend. She did not ask him to do this. They were a weird couple. Honer monster fight. A Honer monster was a condom filled with just enough water that it's full, but doesn't stretch. Then you draw a face on it. Suddenly the classroom was a war zone when 2 kids had filled their desks with Honer monsters and started throwing them at everyone during a history class. Edit. I am pretty proud that my top post is about Honer monsters. In swim class, one of the cheerleaders dove into the pool and came up with her 2 loose school-issued one-piece swimsuits, top half pulled down off to her waist from the rush of water. It could cheerlead the boobs in the pool. Only a few of us saw it. I saw it from poolside because I refused to swim. It was a good day to be a 15-year-old who likes breasts. Friend of mine used to finger his girlfriend in class basically every day. Got the occasional handy. They were sitting right in front of me one time and I gave her a look. And she says, "Don't look if you don't want to see it." They were between me and the blackboard. What was I supposed to do? My friend put a condom on our teacher's water bottle while she wasn't looking. She only noticed as we were leaving. At school, my first year of high school actually, some guys in senior year decided it would be fun to leave a banana peel in the microwave for a whole hour in full power as soon as lunch break was over. They left the banana getting irradiated and left. Skip about 30 minutes. I'm having class, and the school director knocks on the classroom door and says, in an angry tone, "Everyone out into the hallway. There has been a serious problem." We go out and sit on the hallway, hitting our pants in fear, as more and more people from other classes arrive and sit with us. Once every student of the high school is on the hallway, the director says, "Okay, I assume no one will give names, but WHO put the banana peel in the microwave." The microwave caught fire and melted a pile of chairs. Not surprisingly, everyone was struggling hard to keep their it together, as a microwave had been ignited with a banana peel. The surprising part was that, as soon as he asked who did it, a guy stood up and went like, "I did it." The director asked, "Did you do it alone?" To which another 4 students stood up and said, "Nope, we were with him." They all got suspended and we couldn't use the dining room for about 2 days since the smell of burnt plastic wouldn't go away. Luckily the place didn't catch on fire. Edit. Grammar. My old English teacher wrote and published erotica under a pen name. Through further digging, my class found her active BDSM blog and podcasts which we would try to quote in class whenever possible. Back in high school, there were these 2 band kids that were constantly flirting and everyone told them to get a room. Apparently that translated to go duck in the special ed room during practice. They got caught after the janitor had to come clean up afterwards. Apparently, it wasn't a very clean ordeal. They were both suspended the next day and she had a pregnancy scare a couple weeks later. A girl had 2 foursomes in one day, with 2 different sets of guys. No, it wasn't rumor. I knew the girl who confirmed it. Honestly, she was just a really happy hoe. I will say that I am oblivious to signals from women. So there was a girl in my 11th grade science class that sat next to me and we used to talk all the time. She even came over to get help with schoolwork and was touchy-feely and I was always like, what is wrong with you? Again, very oblivious and at self-esteem. One day during winter in class she and I were talking and she said she got her clit pierced. I was like, no the duck you didn't, why do you lie so much? She then proceeded to unbutton and unzip her pants and shove my very cold hands down her pants. Up she pierced it, but she also screamed and stood up with my hands down her pants. The whole class saw and I was bright red. I was super embarrassed and got sent to the principal's office. But I felt a pussy, so win. A substitute teacher get fired for taking pictures of kids. In one of my classes I had him as a sub for a few days and I remember the first day he taught us he made each of us get up and stand with our back facing the door of the room. He'd take the picture and we'd sit back down. I didn't think about this till years later someone that I went to school with brought it up and I asked my mom if she remembered and she did. She told me she had got a call and letter from the school asking if I had said anything to her about that sub or was interested in talking to the police. A tree branch broke off from a tree, smashing right into a girl's head, cracking her skull, nearly killing her. There was so much blood running down her face. High school ski trip. Group of guys were trying to convince a group of girls to flash them in the woods. Girls only agreed to do it if the guys flashed their peens first. Well, it was cold out. The guys were worried about shrinkage. So cut to a shot of 6 or 7 high school boys furiously whacking off in the snow, while a group of bored girls stood and watched. One time as I was leaving my classroom between bells in high school, I saw this girl with rather large breasts come bounding down the hallway, frantically fumbling with the button S on her shirt, jiggling all over the place. Barely a second later, while I'm admiring the scene, some dude came breathlessly sprinting after her shouting, "Wait, girl's name, come back, do that again," before they both bolted outside with him still giving chase. Edit. I should add this was in a more secluded part of the school, near the back, not as much foot traffic, few adults. Friend's brother was caught ducking his GF in the female bathroom. They were both suspended on different days to make sure they wouldn't duck on suspended days. LMAO. There was the boys' dorm, and there was the girls' dorm. There were windows. One night a particularly slutty girl stripped for the boys. It was a pretty good night. The high school I went to was a 5-building campus. I remember hearing about a girl giving a dude head in one of the stairwells, and how a teacher caught them. Later that day I heard rumors that it was a girl I knew, who was also very girl next door straight A student type, but I didn't believe it. I just came right out and told her what people were saying and she got red in the face and kind of laughed it off. That's when I realized that I had actually seen them in that stairwell. It wasn't a highly populated portion of the building it was in, on that same day, probably right before she started to go down on him. They were literally going at it in between the times that classes changed over. I wasn't there for it, but at my high school there was a very infamous senior prank that happened. Basically a student hit a deer or found a dead deer somewhere out on the road or something. 3 to 4 more students took that dead deer into the school cafeteria on the weekend while a school play was happening and put it in the ceiling above the cafeteria. A few days later a teacher felt something dripping on them and I guess saw the blood dripping from the dead deer. School was closed down for 3 days, I think by the CDC, to clean up the mess. In middle school, this kid took my phone. We were in the band room and began running away with it. I subconsciously grabbed a mallet, soft yarn covered tip for xylophone, and threw it like a knife all the way across the room and hit him in the face. His entire face just sorta exploded and as he ran to the nurse he left a huge trail of blood across the school. Everyone just sorta stared at me being the relatively well-mannered quiet kid. A female student being taken from behind by another of our classmates in a hall at school. He'd used a Tato crisp, chips for you Americans, packet in place of a condom. All those sharp edges and the salt and vinegar remnants made it seem very unsafe for all involved. The usual handjobs, blowjobs, drug dealing, but those aren't that bad. We were hanging out in the gym before classes started and in walked a kid who recently dropped out when his sister was killed. I said, "Hey," and he kept walking like no one else was there. He walked over to a well-known moron and shoves a hidden blade into his gut and wrenches it up till his ribcage stopped the steel. He tossed the knife into a nearby trash can and walked out. The knifer got caught and the Niffy lived. Apparently the Niffy had been making fun of the knifer's dead sister. Knifer heard about it and came in to stab the Niffy. A couple years ago as a senior prank, a kid jacked off into one of the communal tubs of ranch. A couple years before that a teacher was arrested for offering girls good grades in exchange for blowjobs. It changed from mayonnaise to ranch. After numerous complaints from the primary school next door to my college high school, the principal gave us an assembly stressing the point don't slip a finger behind the library. Kids can see that it. So it at home you horny duckers. Hilarious assembly. We were pissing ourselves in the back of the hall because we know exactly who he was talking to. They went red as a tomato and looked at each other. In the end, no more complaints from the primary school. Seems like they went home and did it. We had a bathroom in our high school that didn't have any cameras pointing at it. So plenty of students went there to smoke cigs and pot. But there was this one girl who took advantage in other ways. Here I am minding my business trying to smoke a joint in peace when she comes into the bathroom and so does a couple of guys and she just starts blowing all of them. And it leads to them ducking and at this point I was down to the roach. I just flushed it and left. There was said to be a video that floated around and I hoped I wasn't just this weird guy in the background smoking a joint while this girl has a train ran on her. The school caught wind about the whole incident and the bathroom was closed down. Saddest day of my life. A teacher assigned summer homework for the kids that were gonna be in his class the following school year. Once I saw the girl's ankle. How I'm going to hell. My wrestling locker room. Just everything. We had a game called Galaxy. In the showers. We had a long hallway of slippery tile before the entrance. We would pour a ton of soap down the hallway and run down it and slide like a slip and slide. The swirls and bubbles made it look like a galaxy. Also not as NSFW, but sleep trains were a huge thing. I miss those. For those who didn't read my comment below about sleep trains, a large group of us lay down on the mat. Head on top of belly, head on top of belly, head on top of belly, in no particular order or line. Just a weave of guys using each other as a pillow. One of the earliest memories. So early can't remember if it happened or not. In like kindergarten or maybe my first year of school, I was watching a classmate spinning around in a tire swing. One of the 3 chains snapped and I can remember parts of his skull showing. It was cracked in 3 places like a T. I remember the ambulance picking him up. In grade 7, one of the most popular girls turns around after class and licks her finger while looking at me, then asks, "Do you want a BJ?" I laughed and said no. Still haven't slept. Edit. My highest rated comment is my lowest point in my life. Love it. Take it from someone who had similar experiences. You were being punked. She wanted you to say yes. So she could tell her friends how hilarious it was that you went red and said yes and thought you had a chance. Your denial was the only correct move. 2 guys in my class were jacking off to gay porn in class together. They didn't give 2 ducks that people could see. Neither of them go to my school anymore because they got expelled for getting into a fight. Weirdly, they didn't get in trouble for the porn incident though. My friend was in a Catholic boarding school in Ireland last year where a boy rammed another boy hockey stick up his ass. He got expelled and it made the title page of the local newspaper. Also there was a lot of ducking going in the music classroom. I've overheard 2 students having sex in the bathroom stalls. I was 14 and shocked. So at lunchtime in the courtyard at my high school, seagulls would show up every day to scavenge. Some kids would throw them food too. Well, this one kid used to like to scare them off and throw stuff at them. Never intended to really hit them. Then one day he did. He chucked a Gatorade bottle that still had about 1/4 of the liquid still in it. It clocked a seagull in the head and knocked one of its eyes out of its socket. It was bleeding profusely. This kid nearly got his ass beat by about 30 people. Took like 5 teachers to break up the situation. He got expelled in the end. Seagull died, I think. They called animal control or something. But I think too much damage was done to save the poor thing. In an IT class some kid managed to get onto Best Gore and for about an hour my 15-year-old self, who barely even watched porn, was witnessing executions, beheadings, people being gutted, raped, tortured and every vile you can think of. There was a group of about 5 of us, 3 of which were seniors all watching this. We later got into things like felony fights and world stab, but that day I saw hundreds of people die. 10th grade. One girl would wear no panties with a kilt and flash the class her asshole every now and then. Bend over a desk and wiggle her hips and everything. Not sure how NSFW this is, but I work in an elementary school district and we have a code word for the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. We call it lollipoping. All the lab computers have headsets for kids to listen to lessons or whatever, and they all have the wired mic attached to them. The kids like to suck on the mics for whatever reason. Just like a lollipop. Hence the name. I've watched one class come in, suck on the mics for 45 minutes, leave them soaking wet. They leave and the next class comes in and does the same damn thing. Kid pops a wet mic in his mouth and sucks on it all class period. Almost made me puke. Kid used to snort lines of coke in the middle of college algebra. One time I went to the bathroom and found a red used condom in the middle of an empty hallway. I was in 8th grade and looked at a couple of seniors passing by with a "you seeing this it?" face. They looked at me like I had 3 heads for freaking out over a condom. A guy in our class once grabbed scissors by the handle, not the blades, and started running around with them. That wasn't safe at all. I found my teacher's porn stash while he was standing right behind me. I clicked a shortcut without asking and all these porn videos popped up. I immediately turned off the monitor and saw the terror on his face reflected back at me. To me it wasn't a big deal at all because I was a teenager that looked at porn and I just told him directly that it was cool. I honestly didn't care. From my very fast glimpse they appeared to be high budget video files. Nothing perverse or with students. Makes sense now why he would always stand behind us when we used his PC. I can't imagine the amount of stress that gave him. Why even have it there in the first place? A girl came to school completely wrapped in saran wrap, wearing nothing else underneath. For Halloween. She was sent home promptly, but all the guys had seen what they needed. Her older sister was sleeping with a teacher, who committed suicide by gassing himself in his car when his wife found out. There is now a scholarship with his name. The sister's dad is a well-known pastor around town. My high school had a safe and sober grad night. Some kids thought it would be a great idea to take homemade edibles made by some kid's older brother. Flash forward a couple hours and kids start to get violently sick, like changing color and puking on the floor sick. About 4 hours into what should have been a whole night, it was called off as we no longer can guarantee that this night is either safe or sober. All this after members of the administration had just finished praising us for being one of the best classes in recent memory. No pregnancies, relatively few scandalous parties. Alt how we were the reason opaque water bottles were banned. The incident was hush-hush to save said older brother's college baseball scholarship. My entire high school was outside sitting in the bleachers of our football stadium because of a bomb threat. Well, we were out there for quite some time, so naturally high schoolers found some way to entertain themselves. Some kids decided they were going to make condom balloons. I was sat on the opposite side of the stadium, so I didn't know what was going on at first. But eventually everyone saw it and began cheering. All of the teachers were outside with us, and their reactions were priceless. Some were laughing hysterically. Some had to walk away to try and contain themselves. Others tried to ignore it. Perhaps the best part was one of our deans, who had a reputation for being a bit of a hard ass, was struggling to keep it together. You could tell she wanted to remain stone cold but couldn't help but laugh at the sight of a stretched condom floating gracefully through the air. Didn't see it happen, but heard about it. Back when Punk'd was still on TV, this group of guys who were completely stereotypical jackasses brought a camcorder to school and were doing jackass type stunts and punking people. Then they convinced 2 girls to make out and go down on each other in a stairwell. Somehow a teacher found out, and obviously the camcorder had the evidence. They all got suspended for like a month. During middle school it was the absolute peak of jackass popularity. Many of my friends took it upon ourselves to do whatever we thought the guys on Jackass would do. This meant table topping each other. One guy gets down behind an unsuspecting victim and then another guy would push him over him. Dog piles at least 30 guys high. Nut shots via hand. foot, objects, jumping off high ledges, ducking with the lunchroom and classrooms in any way possible. But the worst is when we got into tabletopping and then teabagging guys. Halo and Mountain Dew were our after school hobbies. Naturally it was all good and fun until one guy took my dare a little too seriously and pulled his pants down and teabagged one of our buddies with his bare nutsack. Middle school was magical. Guy didn't play our games much after that, but at least he never snitched. We had a pool in my old high school. Girl didn't have a swimsuit, so she compensated with a white tank top and some gym shorts. No one noticed until she got out of the pool mayo. Don't know why the gym teachers didn't stop her. We had a female gym teacher there as well. Awkward boners everywhere in the men's dressing room afterwards. Also towards the end of the year in 9th grade I was walking down the hallway and a girl who had a short shirt on that didn't cover her belly and some short shorts on had her bush growing out of the top of her shorts. That was pretty cool too. Edit. Last one. In 9th grade we had a fairly attractive Italian teacher and she was pretty cool, so she didn't assign us books. She just handed them out during class. Well, one day some funny guy drew a picture of him and my Italian teacher ducking on her desk. Pretty good illustration I must say, and the teacher saw it. She got super upset and left the room and we had a sub for the rest of the day. When she came back she never spoke of it and the book was thrown out. Huge cunt of a professor in a 100 level course with stadium seating. Tons of people, mostly looking for a blow off course, and this guy is so ducking hardcore and yelling for minutes straight if he thinks he's caught one of the 100+ students not engrossed. Finals day comes. Mid-exam. From down at the bottom of the room, 4 dudes burst in naked and are jumping around waving their Ds and causing the best kind of ruckus. Haven't been so happy to see flailing decent Cersei's walk of shame. Anyway, the plan was clearly to romp around and run up the staircase tiles to THW top and out those doors. Turns out hard ass cunt prof was kinda a badass. I hadn't noticed how ripped this ducker was till that moment. He sprints up an aisle and tackles one of the cocker, pun intended, laggards. This was a full on NFL form tackle on stairs. He then pinned this kid down and basically got in a dominant doggy style pose on him and said something like, "I got you, ya little duck. And when security comes you'll rat out the others." Then he looks over his shoulder and scans the room. He looks ducking, astonished that people are watching the scene unfold instead of diligently taking the exam. "What are you all doing? Get back to it. No extra time." From a friend. He was a sports trainer in high school and was routinely in the locker rooms helping people out with stuff. This one time, he's putting wraps on and sees this guy walking around with a plate of pizza since this was after a game. The guy takes a slice of pie and chucks it into the showers and hits this guy right on his back. The pizza makes a comedic splat and sticks and the kid that got hit just yells, "Duck." Where do I start? My high school made national news because we had a male teacher fresh out of college duck some kid in exchange for a case of beer. My middle school wrestling coach got fired for spanking boys after class. I was actually on the team. He was a creepy methodica. He liked to spar with certain teammates a lot. Made sense after the firing. Back to high school. Our football team famously got a bunch of their players suspended by hazing a freshman with a broomstick up the ass. There were a lot of funny jokes about that one. Faculty generally did their best to hide broomsticks because people used them as reenactment props quite often. One of the women in the class broke down crying as everyone was gathering up their stuff to leave. There was red on her chair and pants. And at first, those of us who were around to help thought she might have had some sort of sudden period. But most of us realized that even that shouldn't produce so much blood right out of nowhere. Then those of us who were acquainted with the process of childbirth realized that she had just miscarried while sitting there, putting away her books. She had been in the early stages of pregnancy when it happened, so most of us didn't know she was expecting. It was a rattling, heartbreaking experience. I'm still in touch with her today, and she and her husband now have 2 adorable and healthy sons. Senior year, a guy supposedly got a blowjob from a girl during an assembly, although he claimed the reason she was under the jacket in his lap was because of a migraine that was made worse by the bright lights in the gymnasium. I later found out I was only a few feet away when it happened because someone took a picture and I was in it.